Space Marines are clearly one of the most powerful factions right now in 9th edition, and we were really looking towards this fact to see if they could address some of the power imbalance that this faction has. Thankfully, there were some changes, but maybe not as much as we were expecting. Why don't we take a look at the changes to Space Marines with this January 2021 fact. Okay, so they changed Space Marines a bit. A few points changes, a few rules changes, some desperately needed stuff, but by and large, the faction changed only a little bit.
Yeah, no, they took, I think you could say they did take a hit, but at the end of the day, they're still very competitive. They're still one of the top armies, really, really powerful.
Nothing about their competitiveness changed.
No, not
really.
They
definitely corrected them in the right way. So almost everything that happened to them was a nerf.
Yeah.
Which is good, but they were all very minor nerfs.
And these are all changes that are good for the game. This is something we want to emphasize when we look at these FAQs, is this is an improvement that's better for the game, better for everyone, including Space Marine players. It does a bit of adjustments to make it a better experience.
It actually does, because when you have some units that are so good, you actually feel compelled to only play them, and you don't get to use all of your codex. Whereas they're bringing things more in line, so you have more choices than you did
And that's going to create more diversity.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and dig in. First, we want to talk about the points changes, which at the end of the day, I think we both think it's kind of a slap on the hand. It was something that was needed.
It's good.
It's going to shave off a bit of efficiency off of the most nefarious units in the codex.
Yeah.
And these units are Outriders, went up 5 points.
Yep.
Wildly efficient units. It's it's going to go up a bit, especially if you're spamming them. Eradicators went up 5 points.
Yep.
Same idea basically. It's only going to go up by 15 points per unit. So if you're only running 1 or 2. Not really going to affect you. And then Inceptors. This one I think is a bit of a miss. They went up by 5 points regardless of the type of Inceptor you are. In my opinion, I think the Plasma Inceptors are the real problem here. They're the ones that are wildly efficient, have blast on 2 small weapons.
Yeah.
I think they should have increased the cost of the Plasma Inceptors and not the Bolter variations.
So maybe the Plasma Gun goes up to 10 points instead of 5 or something
exactly.
Like that. Yeah, I agree. That actually would have been a more measured. But at the end of the day, it's all good. It's not like a Bolter Inceptor is now priced out of play.
No, absolutely. And that's the thing. These are all 5-point increases. So, it's a small chunk. It'll be perfectly fine. Most notably, there's a unit that we think is missing from this list.
Yeah, the new Indominus unit, the Blade Guard veterans, they're excellent.
Yeah.
And they didn't get a hit by this. And so they remain one of these really efficient units.
Yeah.
Almost everything that came out in Indominus for Space Marines is very, very strong. And you can see they've just had to nerf a bunch of them. But yeah, Blade Guard I think needed this 5 points as well, and they didn't get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the interesting things is even though we haven't had a true meta, things have been shifting throughout the last few months. And so obviously these had to be written at a certain time, and it's changing so fast in many ways. Even things like Plasma Inceptors were not really a thing that people were playing even 2 months ago. Did anything change between now and then? No, but people discovered new ways of playing them and making them powerful. So, I think that's part of the reason that they might be a bit behind on things like Blade Guard.
Yeah.
So that's the point increases. Nothing crazy.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you could have thought of probably 100 more things
that
went up in points. And really, so the book is still very, very efficient.
Yes.
It lost really none of its competitive edge. And because you were never spamming any of these units.
No.
Right? Like, okay, yeah, you'd have Eradicators. A list with a lot of Eradicators had like 8.
Right.
Most lists had like 4.
Exactly.
So these are small changes. Same with Outriders. You had like 3 or 6 maybe. Not a huge deal. And even if you had all 9, who cares?
It's just a small efficiency thing. You're gonna have to really actually make decisions about what you want in your army. You might use 1 unit of something or other, but really at the end of the day, it's totally fine. So you're still playing your army, right?
Agreed.
One of it's a small change, but an important one as far as our principles.
That's right.
This is something we've been talking about on the channel before. This is the issue with the apothecary, chief apothecary, being able to resurrect ATVs because they have the bike keyword, and you can resurrect bikes.
This is like a whole 6-wound vehicle that the apothecary could bring back to life. This was
a 90-point just res for free.
This was not intended.
Yeah.
We knew it was not intended.
Yeah.
Anyone could plainly tell that GW did not want you resing infinite, invader ATVs, which are very powerful units.
They're quite good. Yeah.
And so we never played with it. I don't know anyone who did, but I'm sure people did out there very happily. I actually saw it on a few battle report channels where they're like, ha ha ha, my ATV. And I was like, that's rough.
That's horrible.
But yeah, they got rid of it. They basically put it back in, said that you can't res the Invader ATV. This guy isn't a magical conjurer who generates new vehicles. He's an apothecary, which he's already crazy powerful as an apothecary. He's too powerful as an apothecary. So this is a tiny nerf to him for something really you shouldn't have been doing.
Especially because they could have also just said he doesn't get to resurrect bikes at all. Instead, they solved it by explicitly calling out the ATV, saying you can still res infantry and bikes, but not the ATV.
Yeah, still bringing an Outrider back is outrageous.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
It's a 50-point model, and you get to bring several of them back in the game for free.
Yeah.
It's still much.
It's an interesting take on their part, I'll say that.
Yeah, they're like, this is no good, but that's unreasonable.
Yeah, exactly. So one other change, well, it's more of a clarification, truly. This isn't going to change the way that we've played it, because this is how we believed it was intended and meant to be done. And this is the way that super doctrines are treated when you have abilities that put a unit into that super doctrine.
Yeah, this is like adaptive strategy, the stratagem that lets you put a unit into all doctrines.
Savage Echoes.
Savage Echoes, yeah. There's lots and lots of stratagems that let you put your unit into a particular doctrine. Space Wolves have it, Blood Angels have it. And rules as written, sometimes it seemed as though you didn't get your super doctrine ability, like Blood Angels +1 attack. Or
the times that it was stacking, right?
Exactly.
The way it was written. But the intent, at least to us, was very clear.
Yeah.
And so
it was clear they didn't want you to go into the doctrine just to get 1 AP.
Right, because that's what it would have been.
Yeah.
Essentially. And so this has been clarified that yes, you do in fact get the full benefit of your super doctrine by being in that doctrine, whether or not the rest of your army is, all that good stuff. So it just kind of clarifies it, and I think it's a good thing to just talk about as far as playing to the intent at this time when we're getting fewer updates. I think it's important, even competitively, to consider what are they trying to say rather than what does it technically say, in a paragraph.
It was pretty clear to us that this is what they meant. There was so much, and people spent a lot of hours of their life debating this one.
Yeah.
It was clear what they wanted.
Yeah,
I think.
Exactly.
But I'm glad that they clarified it anyways.
Yeah. So there's a number of changes that affect everyone in the game, right? These were all these Space Marine specific changes that we think are important.
Right.
But a number of secondaries changed in the GT pack and the Grand Tournament pack. That's going to affect all of our games.
That's right.
A number of secondaries changed. One of them was Why We Stand, We Fight.
Yeah, this was changed from being you're picking your most expensive model to your most expensive unit. And this is crucial for Space Marines because they were one of the factions that could abuse the secondary the most. Because they could build these, infantry-heavy lists where the 3 most expensive models were support characters that were in the back, things like chapter masters. And these characters were impossible to dig out, like impossible, unless they got tabled, which
there's no way.
Nobody tables Space Marines other than other Space Marines.
Preposterous.
So it was a really abusive tactic, really. But now that they have to pick their most expensive unit, it's almost always going to be a frontline thing that's going to die.
Exactly.
Very, very hard for this stratagem or this secondary to be used by them and be a guaranteed set of points.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is, again, bad for Space Marines, good for the game.
Yeah.
It's going to make you have to pick some other secondaries, like Oath of Moment, which is in the same category. So not so bad at the end of the day, right?
That's true.
So another change, which doesn't truly hurt Space Marines, but it helps all of their opponents, their competitors.
I think it helps them too.
You think so?
Yeah.
This is the Bring It Down change? Yeah, so this essentially changes Bring It Down. It used to grant 2 points or 3 points for a vehicle, depending on how many wounds it has.
Yeah.
Now it grants either 1, 2, or 3 points, depending on how many wounds it has. This means that armies that have a moderate number of vehicles will no longer give up maximum points, often not even close.
Yeah, something like Guard had to give up 15 points here, right?
Bad.
And that's not it. There was many factions that were like that. Space Marines, likewise, do have a lot of vehicles, right? And there's Dreadnought builds that are really interesting.
This is great.
There's Rhino builds that are interesting.
Yeah.
And so now those don't give up, like a Rhino gives up 1 point now.
Yeah.
So you're not getting up to that 10, 12, 15 area that you might have been when you started taking vehicles.
Right.
Obviously, Space Marines with the Eradicators are really good at taking enemy vehicles out. So this is kind of neither a buff nor a nerf. It means that they can build more vehicle lists, and it means your opponent can build more vehicles. It's just good for everybody.
I think this is an interesting one that's going to have a big impact on people playing in the meta, right? There were reasons to not take Rhinos or Mortifiers or other these kind of smaller vehicles like just bled points and Venoms, right? And I think I'm excited to see how this changes things up and encourages people to bring different types of armies. So another change, another secondary. Well, it's not actually secondary. This is a core change to the game itself, right? This is deciding who goes first in the game, right? Previously to the FAQ, we would roll off, and whoever rolled higher would get to choose who gets to go first or who goes second. That is no longer the case. Whoever rolls higher in that roll-off has to go first.
They must take it.
Yeah, exactly.
This is kind of big because one of the Space Marines' best secondaries is Oath of Moment.
Right.
And Oath of Moment is a Space Marine specific one and has lots of ways to get points. The one we love the most is keeping a unit within 6 inches of the center of the board at the end of the battle round. And if you go second, all you have to do is just walk a model up there and it's guaranteed points. So for Space Marines, actually going second was really beneficial because this was one secondary that you could basically guarantee. And it's very easy to build around going second.
Right.
It was, at least.
Yeah.
So now it's a little more random. It's a minor thing, but it still can matter.
Yeah, it's an important change to something that kind of removed interaction potentially, right? It was, again, just I think it's better for the game overall. At the moment, it was so difficult to stop if they were going second.
Hey, if you're bad at dice rolling, you still might go second a lot.
Yeah, there you go. So, I'm counting on it.
Yeah,
I know that's for sure.
So you'll be fine.
That's right. And the last thing we wanted to talk about for the Space Marines is the concept of 5th round scoring, right? This has changed very fundamentally, right?
Agreed.
For every other turn, you score your primary at the beginning of the round, right? But now in the 5th round, if you're going second, you score at the end of your turn. This is a big change for all the armies, right?
It's a huge change for all the armies. And it's hard to say how this is going to impact Space Marines, but I'll give you my take on it. The Space Marines are probably better than almost any army currently at holding the mid-board points. Because they have durable units that are really fighty, and they can have army-wide objective secured. And this really helps your opponents, in my opinion, because in that last turn, they could come up and go all out onto a point without fear of reprisal.
Exactly.
And they can take a point back for a turn, which can typically be done, especially when you have nothing to fear. So this, to me, feels like opponents are going to do a better job at fighting the Space Marines off the midboard in that 5th turn.
Exactly, and that's been kind of the difficulty against fighting Space Marines before is you can get on the point, you can maybe take the point, but they're so hard to remove. They'll retaliate next turn, and so if you have that basically free turn, that's a big deal. It's potential 15 points in primary. It's going to have to keep Space Marine honest, and they're not going to be able to just abandon the points and throttle the damage in the last turn.
That's true.
Which also is good for the game too. Let's be honest.
There's other ways to think about it though. Space Marines are obviously a very elite army with very few units. It means that they can even be more cautious. Towards the end of the game. And then with their OBSEC abilities, they can get onto the points at the end and take them as well.
It's really great.
You can use this to your advantage. It just means you do have to be a more thoughtful player. So overall, it's a good change.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are the most important changes we think came out of the January 2021 FAQ. We know there's a lot of information. It definitely caught us off guard by how much came. We think overall it's good for the game. Definitely some big changes. We're curious to see what you guys think about all this stuff, how you're going to be adapting your Space Marines and adapt fighting against Space Marines after this FAQ. So definitely let us know in the comments below. We'll be, of course, playing these new rules immediately as we have been. So really excited to see all those changes and see what you guys come up with on the tabletop.